So when we're asked for the length of the arc, first thing I gotta ask myself is how much of the circle we have. In this case, we have 90 out of the 360. Because I'm asking for the length of around the circle, I'm thinking the distance around the circle, since the radius is 13, I'm gonna say 26 pi, and I'll even write it as a fraction. 26 because I went radius times 2. So how much of the circle times the distance around the circle, which is radius times 2. Now simplify as much as you can. 90 over 360, let me divide each by 90. So that's going to be 1 over 4. I know I multiply straight across. So that's the only way I cannot simplify it. But the 26 and the 4 I can. Let me divide each by 2. 13 and 2. So on the top, I have 1 times 13 pi. So 13 pi. At the bottom, 2 times 1. 2. So my answer is 13 pi over 2. Now, in your case, when you type it, is 13 pi backslash 2. Similar to what we did for sector area. It's just that sector area, we were looking at the area of the circle. Here, we're looking at the length of the circle. So that's what I said. It's very similar to something we saw in the past. Looking at number 2, I'm going to go 270 out of 360 times, since the radius is 12, I'm going to say the distance around the circle is 24 pi. Right? Radius times 2. 270 over 360. Let me divide each by 90. 3 over 4. The 4 and the 24, let me divide each by 4. So now on top, I have 3 times 6 pi, which is 18 pi. Right? I have 3 times 6 pi. At the bottom, I have 1 times 1, which is 1. Now, when I have a fraction and the bottom is 1, I'm just going to write this as 18 pi or 18 pi. Do not write it over 1 or the homework's going to mark it wrong. Now, to make it a little more realistic, because I know on the real world, you're not going to go and call everything, oh, the area of this or the length of this is something pi. I'm not going to call that. Let's say I'm building a fence for a park. So I'm going to change instructions to round your answer to the nearest tenth. When I include this on your instructions, when I say round your answers to the nearest tenth, I'm asking you guys to use pi as a decimal. So don't leave pi as a pi, make pi a decimal. And we round it as to be 3.14. So looking at this question, find the length of the arc. First of all, I start with 270 over 360, right? How much of the circle I have. And I have to multiply this by 6 pi over 1. And once again, 6 because I went radius times 2. I'm going to use pi as a decimal. So on the top, I'm not going to worry about simplifying. I'm going to let the calculator do its job. On the top, I'm going to have 270 times 6 times 3.14. Right? I'm multiplying everything on top. But pi, I'm looking at as a decimal. And whatever I get, I'm going to divide this by 360. Okay. So once again, I'm not going to worry about simplifying. I'm just going to type everything in. 270 times 6 times 3.14. And whatever I get, I'm going to divide it by 360. My case, I get 14.1. I rounded to the nearest tenth. It was 14.13, but I rounded to 14.1. Same thing for question number 2. I'm going to start with 315 over 360. How much of the circle I have? I'm going to multiply this by 18 pi, because it's radius times 2. Because I'm going to use pi as a decimal, I'm not going to worry about simplifying. On the top, I'm just going to go 315 times 18 times 3.14. I'm just multiplying my top numbers divided by 360. So 315 times 18 times 3.14, divide everything by 360. I'm going to call this 49.5 because I'm going to round it to one decimal place.